Sharon found wife's secret list of 22 reasons to divorce me. My response changed everything. The envelope was tucked behind our wedding photo on her nightstand. 22 reasons why our 12-year marriage should end, typed in her neat corporate font like a termination letter. But what she didn't know was that while she'd been documenting my failures, I'd been building something that would make every single item on that list completely irrelevant. By the time I was done, she'd be begging me to tear up the list herself. If you're into honest stories about relationships, trust, and betrayal, hit that follow button. You won't want to miss the next one. Let me back up and explain how I discovered that my wife Lauren had turned our marriage into a performance review where I was apparently failing every metric. It started when I was looking for our insurance papers after a minor fender bender. Lauren wasn't home, and she'd mentioned they might be in her nightstand drawer. What I found instead was an envelope with my name on it in her handwriting. My first thought was that it might be a love letter. We'd been going through a rough patch lately, and maybe this was her way of working through her feelings. I was wrong, so completely wrong. "Dear future me," it began, "if you're reading this, you're finally ready to admit what you've known for months. This marriage isn't working, and it's not going to work. Here's why." What followed was the most methodical character assassination I've ever read. 22 numbered points, each one a carefully documented reason why I was an inadequate husband. 1. He's become financially stagnant. No ambition for advancement. 2. Emotionally unavailable. More interested in his phone than conversations. 3. Takes me for granted. When's the last time he planned a date? 4. Lazy about household responsibilities despite my full-time job. 5. His friends are immature and a bad influence on his priorities. 6. No longer makes an effort with his appearance or health. 7. Dismissive of my career achievements and goals. 8. Boring in bed. Same routine. No creativity or passion. 9. Won't discuss having children despite my increasing desire. 10. Spends too much on his hobbies while criticizing my purchases. The list went on and on. By item 15, I was numb. By 22, I was something else entirely. Cold, calculating, dangerous. But here's what hit me hardest. She wasn't wrong about everything. I had gotten comfortable. I had stopped trying as hard. Marriage does that sometimes. You settle into routines and assume your partner will always be there. The difference was, instead of talking to me about these issues, she'd been building a case for divorce like a prosecutor preparing for trial. I took photos of every page with my phone, then carefully put the envelope back exactly where I'd found it. No confrontation. Not yet. This required strategy. If Lauren had taken the time to document 22 reasons to leave me, clearly this had been brewing for months, maybe years. I'd been too focused on our daily routine to notice the foundation cracking beneath us. That night at dinner, I watched her differently. The way she answered my questions with minimal engagement. How she scrolled through her phone instead of making conversation. The subtle eye rolls when I mentioned anything about my day. She'd already checked out of our marriage mentally. She was just building courage to make it official. "How was work?" I asked, genuinely trying to engage. "Fine," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Same as always." "Anything interesting happen?" "Not really." This was the woman who used to tell me everything about her day, who used to laugh at my jokes and ask for my opinions on her projects. Now I was getting the same energy I'd give to a stranger on an elevator. But instead of getting defensive or starting a fight, I did something that would change everything. I started taking notes too. Over the next week, I documented our interactions with the same clinical precision she'd used in her list, her responses to my attempts at conversation, the way she dismissed my efforts to plan activities together, how she'd rather spend time texting her friends than engaging with her husband. But more importantly, I started making changes, not to win her back, that ship might have already sailed, but to become the man I should have been all along. Monday morning, I joined the gym 3 blocks from my office. Not the budget chain I'd been considering, but the upscale fitness center where successful professionals worked out before demanding days. Tuesday, I scheduled a consultation with a career counselor. If Lauren thought I lacked ambition, she was about to see what real ambition looked like. Wednesday, I made an appointment with a financial advisor to discuss investment strategies and wealth building. Thursday, I called my college friend Marcus, who'd become a successful entrepreneur. I need to level up, I told him. Everything. Career, finances, life direction. What's my first move? By Friday, I had a complete transformation plan. But I wasn't doing this for Lauren anymore. I was doing it for me. Because somewhere in those 22 stinging critiques was a wake-up call I'd apparently needed. The changes started small but accelerated quickly. I began waking up at 5 a.m. for gym sessions before work. The physical transformation was just the beginning. The mental shift was more profound. I started reading business and self-development books during my commute instead of mindlessly scrolling social media. I researched advanced certifications in my field and enrolled in courses that would boost my earning potential. Most importantly, I stopped trying to get Lauren's attention through desperate attempts at conversation. Instead, I focused entirely on my own growth and development. The shift in our dynamic was immediate. "You're up early," she commented on my third morning of 5 a.m. gym sessions. "New routine," I said, checking my appearance in our hallway mirror. The changes were already visible. Better posture, more energy, clothes that fit my improving physique. "Since when do you care about working out?" "Since I decided to care about myself." The way she studied me after that comment told me everything. This wasn't the response she'd expected from her financially stagnant, emotionally unavailable husband. 2 weeks in, I got a call that changed everything. The career counselor had connected me with a headhunter who'd found a position that was perfect for my skill set. Regional sales director for a tech company with a salary that was 60% higher than my current job. The interview process was intense, but the new focused version of myself crushed every conversation. 3 interviews later, they offered me the position. That night, I told Lauren about the job offer over dinner. Our first real conversation in weeks. "You're considering leaving your company?" she asked, clearly surprised. "But you've been there for 8 years. "Sometimes growth requires change," I replied, watching her process this information. "The new position offers better compensation, stock options, and advancement opportunities." For the first time in months, she was fully present in our conversation, asking detailed questions about the role, the company, the potential for career growth. "When would you start?" she asked. "I'm accepting the offer tomorrow." Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "You've already decided?" "I've been making a lot of decisions lately." That night, she tried to initiate intimacy for the first time in weeks. I politely declined, citing an early morning and the need for good sleep before my final day at my current job. The confusion on her face was unmistakable. This wasn't the predictable husband from her list. A month into my transformation, everything had changed. My new job was challenging but rewarding, with colleagues who respected my contributions and a boss who valued my strategic thinking. My physical transformation was becoming noticeable. The gym sessions, combined with better nutrition and more sleep, had sculpted my physique in ways that made heads turn at the office. But the most significant change was psychological. I'd stopped seeking Lauren's approval for my decisions. I made plans, pursued interests, and built a life that would thrive with or without her participation. The evening that everything came to a head started innocuously enough. I was getting ready for a work networking event, something I never would have attended 6 months earlier. "Another work thing?" Lauren asked, watching me straighten my tie. "Client appreciation dinner. Should be interesting." "I could come with you," she offered, the first time she'd shown interest in my work activities in years. "That's thoughtful, but it's specifically for department heads and their key clients. Not really a +1 situation." "Oh," her disappointment was evident. "When will you be back?" "Late. Don't wait up." As I headed for the door, she called after me. "We should talk soon about us." I paused, turned back to face her. "What about us?" "We've been distant lately. I miss how we used to be." "How we used to be," I repeated slowly. "You mean when I was the man from your list?" The color drained from her face. What list? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken of her 22 reasons. Her mouth opened in shock, then closed without sound. You weren't supposed to see that, she whispered, but I did, and it was enlightening. I put my phone away and continued toward the door. We'll talk when I get home, all of it. The networking event was exactly what I needed. 3 hours of building professional relationships without the emotional weight of a failing marriage consuming my mental energy. I connected with potential clients, exchanged cards with influential contacts, and even received an informal offer for an even better position at a competitor company. When I arrived home just after midnight, Lauren was waiting in the living room, clearly having spent hours preparing for our conversation. I owe you an explanation, she began. You owe me honesty, I corrected, sitting across from her rather than beside her on the couch. How long have you been planning to leave? She was quiet for a long moment. 6 months, maybe longer. And instead of discussing your concerns with your husband, you decided to build a legal case against me. It wasn't meant to be legal. It was just processing, trying to understand why I felt so unhappy. By documenting my failures instead of addressing them, she started crying then. I know how it looks, but I felt like we'd grown apart, like you'd stopped trying. I didn't know how to bring it up without it turning into a fight. So you decided to leave instead. I thought about it. Yes. I leaned forward, maintaining eye contact. What changed your mind? You changed, she said immediately. These past few months, you've become someone I barely recognize. Confident, successful, independent, like you don't need me anymore. There it was, the admission I'd been waiting for. You're right, I said calmly. I don't need you anymore. I choose you. There's a difference. Her tears stopped abruptly. What does that mean? It means the man from your list, the one who was stagnant, lazy, and emotionally unavailable, he needed you to feel complete. The man sitting here now has options. I stood up and walked to our bookshelf, pulling out a folder I'd hidden behind some old novels. What's that? She asked. My list. I placed it on the coffee table between us. Unlike her 22 reasons to leave, my folder contained something different entirely. Financial statements showing my increased earning potential. Investment portfolios I've built. Property listings for apartments I could afford on my own. Business plans for consulting opportunities. Everything I'd need to build a successful life without you. Her face went white as she flipped through the documents. You're leaving me. I'm showing you what leaving me actually cost. I sat back down, maintaining the power position. Your list focused on what was wrong with our marriage. My list shows what you lose if you end it. She stared at the financial projections, the career advancement plans, the evidence of transformation she'd witnessed but not fully comprehended. I don't understand, she whispered. You fell in love with potential 12 years ago. You married a man you thought you could build a life with, but somewhere along the way, you stopped believing in that potential and started documenting failures instead. I reached for the folder and closed it. I've spent the last few months becoming the man I should have been all along. Not for you, but for me. The question now is whether you want to be part of that future or not. Of course I want to be part of it. You're my husband. Being your husband is a choice I make every day, just like leaving is a choice you've been considering every day for 6 months. The silence stretched between us. Finally, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. What do you want from me? I want you to decide, not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Do you want to rebuild this marriage with the man I've become? Or do you want to continue living with the ghost of who I used to be? She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. The man who'd lost 20 pounds and gained immeasurable confidence, who doubled his income and tripled his ambitions, who no longer needed her validation to know his worth. I want to rebuild, she said quietly, but I don't know if I deserve the chance. Deserving it and earning it are different things. I stood up and headed toward our bedroom. Your list stays in that envelope forever. We never discussed those 22 reasons again because they're irrelevant now. If you have concerns about our marriage going forward, you bring them directly to me. No more secret documentation. Where are you going? She asked. To bed. I have an early meeting with a potential new client. Can I sleep in our bed tonight? I paused at the bottom of the stairs. This is still your house, but earning back the intimacy and trust you documented yourself out of, that's going to take time. Over the following weeks, Lauren made genuine efforts to reconnect. She started asking about my work with real interest. She suggested activities we could do together. She even began working out herself, inspired by my transformation. But the dynamic had permanently shifted. I was no longer the husband seeking her approval. I was the man she needed to prove herself worthy of keeping. The real test came 2 months later when I received that competitor's job offer I'd mentioned, a position that would require relocating to another state. You're seriously considering moving? Lauren asked when I told her about the opportunity. I'm considering all my options. What about us? What about our life here? What about it? 6 months ago, you had 22 reasons why this life wasn't working. She was quiet for a long moment. That was before. Before what? Before I realized what I was about to lose. I studied her face, looking for the genuine emotion beneath the performance. What are you asking me? I'm asking you to choose us. Choose our marriage. Choose to rebuild here instead of starting over somewhere else. Give me a reason that's not about what you want, but about what you offer. The question caught her completely off guard. For months, she'd been focused on why our marriage wasn't meeting her needs. Now I was asking what value she brought to the partnership. Anna, she started, then stopped. I need to think about that. Think about it, I agreed, but understand that I'm not the same man who would automatically sacrifice my opportunities to maintain someone else's comfort. That night, she came to bed with a handwritten letter. Not a list of complaints, but a proposal for our future. What she would contribute, how she would support my continued growth, why our partnership could be stronger than anything we could build separately. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And it was the first time in our 12-year marriage that she'd approached our relationship as something she needed to invest in, rather than something she was entitled to benefit from. I declined the out-of-state position, but not because she asked me to. I declined it because I'd built something valuable here, not just our marriage, but a network, a reputation, and opportunities that I'd created through my own effort. 6 months after finding her list, we renewed our vows. Not because our marriage needed saving, but because we'd built something entirely new worth celebrating. The ceremony was small but meaningful. In my vows, I promised to continue growing and evolving, to never again settle for being less than my best self. In hers, she promised to never again take our partnership for granted, to address concerns directly rather than documenting disappointments, and to contribute actively to our shared success, rather than merely benefiting from it. The list of 22 reasons still exists, locked away in our safe deposit box. Not as a reminder of past failures, but as evidence of how completely two people can transform when they stop settling for mediocrity. Sometimes Lauren asks if I ever think about what would have happened if I'd confronted her immediately about the list, if I'd fought for our marriage with desperate pleas and promises to change. The answer is simple. That approach might have saved our marriage, but it wouldn't have saved me. By focusing on becoming someone worth keeping rather than begging someone to keep me, I'd discovered something more valuable than her love. I'd rediscovered my own worth. The man she'd married 12 years earlier had potential. The man she'd documented 6 months ago was settling for mediocrity. The man she's married to now has realized that potential and refuses to accept anything less than he deserves. Her list had 22 reasons why our marriage should end. I had only one reason why it should continue. I'd become a man she couldn't afford to lose, not through manipulation or emotional blackmail, but by embodying every quality that makes a partner irreplaceable. Success, confidence, growth, and the quiet power that comes from knowing you have options, but choosing to stay because the partnership enhances rather than diminishes your life. A year later, Lauren's sister was going through her own marital problems. During a family dinner, she asked Lauren for advice. "How did you two work through your rough patch?" she asked. "You seem happier than ever." Lauren looked at me across the table, a mixture of admiration and gratitude in her expression. I learned the difference between settling and choosing, she said, and he learned the difference between being needed and being valued. Her sister looked confused. What's the difference? When someone needs you, you're meeting a requirement. When someone values you, you're exceeding expectations. One makes you essential, the other makes you irreplaceable. That night, as we got ready for bed, Lauren pulled out a new envelope from her nightstand drawer. For a moment, my blood ran cold. Surely not another list. Instead, she handed me what looked like a performance review. But this time, it was evaluating her own contributions to our marriage. 22 points detailing how she'd grown, what she'd learned, and how she planned to continue earning her place in our partnership. "Your turn to grade me," she said with a smile. I read through her self-assessment, impressed by the honesty and insight. She'd identified areas where she'd fallen short and created specific action plans for improvement. "What's my grade?" she asked when I finished reading. "This isn't about grades anymore," I replied, pulling her close. "It's about continuous improvement for both of us." "So we're good." "We're better than good. We're choosing each other every day, consciously and deliberately. That's not good. That's exceptional." 2 years after finding that list of 22 reasons to end our marriage, we'd built something neither of us had thought possible. A partnership based on mutual respect, continuous growth, and the understanding that love isn't just a feeling, it's a daily decision to invest in each other's success. The list that was meant to document our failure had instead become the catalyst for our greatest success. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you if you're strong enough to use it as fuel for transformation rather than evidence for surrender. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.